Welcome to the Squad Show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Are you ready for the NFL Draft? Downtown Minneapolis, 2028.
What's going on? Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Twins baseball back today got me thinking worst depth, Vikings defense or the Twins bullpen. We'll start to find that out this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm Alec Lewis. Happy to be here. I'll answer that question. The depth for the Twins, without a doubt, is worse, Luke.
I'm Reggie Wilson. Alec and I's Tigers are out of the tournament. So, of course, we're talking Kyler Murray. Why not?
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
Hey, it's a Thursday on the Viking Squad Show. Welcome in, streaming on Locked On Vikings. Glad you're with us on today's show. We've explored all the positive paths. Today, it's the drawbacks of Kyler Murray. That's where we start the show. Plus, Alec Lewis, in a timely fashion, just published a piece on what's going on with Jonathan Greenard. We'll dive into the status of the star edge rusher, talk about the Vikings' deepest and shallowest position groups as we stand right now. And, of course, we'll have a little prospect of the day with our man Spinman and address the 2028 draft bid the Vikings are making for downtown a couple of years from now. But we start with Kyler Murray. That's where we're going to start every show for the next 6 months. Kyler Murray at $1.3 million. Have to add that caveat in there every time we bring him up. We have painted a very optimistic picture on this show. I think we were optimistic when it was rumored he was coming. We were optimistic when it was confirmed he was coming. We've addressed a lot of the potential that Kyler Murray represents. Today, we spend a segment on the downsides, the cons list for Kyler Murray, the drawbacks. Alec Lewis, our man, give us one. We don't need to rattle them all off at once. Let's turn take a little bit, but give us one. Give us one drawback of the Kyler Murray experience that we can expect.
Yeah, the health is the easiest place to start for me. The guy's played 17 games once in the last 5 years. And we have seen in recent years what happens to Kevin O'Connell's teams and to the Vikings teams when they don't have a quarterback for 17 games. I mean, Kevin O'Connell at the Combine in Indianapolis was pretty forward and open and honest about the idea that the 2 years he's had a guy start 17 games, I believe the record is like 27-7. The 2 years that they haven't had a guy start 17 games, I think the record's like 16-18 or something of that sort. Yeah. So
not only that, having like 3 guys per year start in those seasons, 3 guys a game sometimes.
Yeah. And 3 guys, I mean, the third often being either a late round pick in Jaron Hall or an undrafted player, Max Brosmer. So I would just say, I mean, to start, the health. I mean, Kyler Murray, his play style, his stature is a rarity within the NFL. Like I was listening to some stuff yesterday about Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson, I believe, is like 10 pounds heavier at least than Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler might be thicker. He might be, he's more elusive. But there's no question that when you have the frame that Kyler Murray has, it's going to lend itself to, to being the durability being a question mark and a conversation point. So that's the play. That's where my mind first goes when I think about the potential pitfalls with this signing and what it could look like in 2026.
Yeah, 60% of games played the last 4 years for Kyler Murray. I think his first 3 years, he went like 16, 16, 14, which is not bad. The last 4 years, I want to say it's 11, 8, 17, and 5. So the health is probably number one with a bullet. Number two, I would toss out the lack of playoff success or even experience. I think to the Sam Darnold year. Does he win a Super Bowl with Seattle if he doesn't go through those battles with the Vikings the year before, right? Like he had that playoff-like atmosphere at Detroit and fell on his face. He had the real playoff game against the Rams and fell on his face. And presumably learned lessons in those games, like understood what it was going to require, and then climbed that mountain the following year. Kyler Murray has one playoff appearance and he got crushed. That was like, 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. He hasn't really gone through those battles. He's barely played in meaningful December games at all. So a pessimistic, optimistic view, even if it goes well early in this season for Kyler Murray, he hasn't been able to prove or sharpen himself in big games in his career. Very scarcely has that been the case for him. So I would be concerned that even if he's in that spot, how will he conduct himself when the lights are the hottest? So that's a downside for me. Inman, what do you got?
Well, just the streaky kind of hot and cold, nature of Kyler Murray. That's obviously a worry as well, right? And also, too, I want to say, I think a lot of that has to do with the health as well. When you're not playing consistently week in and week out, when you're not at practice week in and week out, that can certainly affect your kind of consistency. But, you get enamored with the athleticism, this kind of high-end elite play and talent, this kind of backyard football style that, is on SportsCenter top 10. It's just kind of mesmerizing, but it's like then after a great, cool, fun walk-off winner one week, he goes 0-3 the next 3 weeks. And that can be a lot to deal with, I think, not just from a coaching staff lens, but a locker room too, week to week, having a guy that, looks like a top 5 quarterback one game and then just looks very, out of sync the next couple weeks. And honestly, when you watch him in Arizona too, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that as good as he can be in the pocket, which that's ultimately where defenses are always going to make every quarterback win at the end of the day at some juncture. He just hasn't mastered that part of the game yet. It's not what he's known for. It's not his bread and butter. So when you're relying on all those kind of improv skills, relying on getting into the perfect rhythm every game, that's when kind of the wheels can start to fall off a little bit. And he starts to kind of color outside the lines too much, so to speak, outside of the offensive scheme and play calling. So, definitely health number one with a bullet. And then just, again, that kind of streaky, hot and cold nature. That is Kyler Murray and always has been.
Reggie Wilson, what do you got?
So this to me is an interesting stat that I'm going to throw out here, because Kyler is known for his elusiveness and, making guys look silly and extending plays and all that stuff. But going into last season, PFF had him ranked 31st out of 33 quarterbacks when under pressure. And to Alec's point, a lot of that is stature. When the pressure gets in his face and there's not a clean pocket and there's not the throwing lanes that he can really see, that presents a problem, because he's not this tall, Josh Allen type of a guy where he can see over things and he can, all that. Like, if he can't see, that's a problem. And so you add pressure to that, and now you're looking at a guy, who, Kevin O'Connell likes guys operating out of the pocket. And I think that'll be a big coaching point, getting Kyler into the building and into the way of doing things, the KO way. But if he's not able to, kind of get out of that pressure consistently, then I don't think the offense is going to do what Kevin O'Connell wants it to do. Now, look, that's been a coaching point. That's been a talking point for Kevin, like, since he's been here, getting the pressure off the quarterback. It reached the breaking point, as we mentioned, those last 2 games of Sam Darnold's tenure, where he was sacked 76 times, 77 times. It was ridiculous. And, his message, KO's message, was we have to solidify the interiors of the offensive and defensive line. That's what he said. And they've been trying to do that, their efforts, swinging on Will Fries, swinging on Ryan Kelly, not being able to predict what happened to Ryan Kelly, but he did those things to try to help the quarterback out. And, we saw at times McCarthy was under heavy pressure, and, he's athletic, so he was able to try to do some things. We kind of had a running joke in the sports office about the somersaults that JJ McCarthy would do in games when he's trying to escape pressure. So I don't know that we want to see Kyler Murray doing any somersaults, front flips, trying to get out of pressure. But that does bring a level of concern, especially when you talk about, his stature. And there are going to be times where he gets under pressure and makes some great stuff happen. But to Luke's point and to Alec's point, like, we've seen Kyler kind of go downhill as the season goes along from a health standpoint. I feel like the first 5 to 7 games of a season, he looks incredible on like an MVP type trajectory. And then his body just doesn't hold up over the 17 games of the season, 18 games, whatever it is of the season. And then you kind of start to see some of the inconsistencies show up. Now, like I said, I think that's going to be a coaching point for Kevin O'Connell to try to bring some consistency to his game, because it hasn't necessarily been there throughout his career. But one consistent thing about Kevin O'Connell's offenses is there's some pressure there, and he likes those long developing 5-7 step drop plays. And I feel like if he has Kyler under center, he's going to be trying to dial up more of those explosives, as he calls them. And we're going to see if that line can keep Kyler or whoever's the starting quarterback clean.
Kyler Murray,
just real quick, I was just going to say.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's a pretty good point, and maybe not like a historic downfall of him 7 years into his career, but it's a concern, right? It's kind of a red flag. Like, this is a big transition from a lot more spread out kind of style system he played with in Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury, both in college and pros, I should say, to now more of this West Coast Kyle Shanahan type of system. You got to get through your reads a lot quicker. You got to get through your reads a lot more efficiently. You got to get under center more. You got to read a defense more pre and post snap. So it is a big transition for him that I think is going to take a lot of work from KOC and his coaching staff to adapt and kind of find some sort of happy medium here, tailoring, Kyler's skill set without tearing the whole offense down to the studs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I looked up his passer rating under pressure in his 7 years: 21st, 20th, 16th, 39th, then an outlier of 6th, back to 39th, 33rd. So he's average to very bad when throwing under pressure. The upside is that he can avoid that pressure a lot of times. I would also put this out there. He has been average to below average his entire career as a play-action quarterback. And I wonder, Alec, if there's something to his inability early in his career, and even to this day, he's not been an under-center quarterback. Reggie and Luke just talked about the need to operate under center in a Kevin O'Connell offense. He has spent 89% of his career in shotgun. That's crazy. That's like, I think I looked up Kirk Cousins. I looked up Sam Darnold. It's down around 65, 70, maybe 75% at the high end. 90% for Kyler Murray as a shotgun quarterback, which makes me think that's affected his ability to operate out of play action, just because that fake is a little, I think, easier to read. Do you have any idea or hunch if Kevin O'Connell wants to operate from the shotgun to that degree?
I don't think anybody wants any real consistent West Coast mind will want to operate from the shotgun to that degree. But this conversation is great because one of the difficult things to parse, whether it is the streakiness, whether it is production dipping down the back half of seasons, one of the challenging parts, and this is like even when I'm talking to people who have spent time with them in Arizona, which I've done a lot the last week and a half, is how much of it is especially early in his career, how much of some of the streakiness or the production drop off is on him versus the nature of specifically the system under Cliff Kingsbury. And that is a very nuanced, complex evaluation that has a lot of opinions depending on who you're talking to within the building, the buildings of people who have spent time with Kyler Murray. So that's one interesting part of it. But I do think whether it is operating more under center, whether it is throwing over the middle of the field. Like, those are potential downsides that Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray together are going to have to work through beginning now. I mean, whether we're talking about OTAs in the spring, whether we're talking about fall training camp, I view this very much similar to Sam Darnold coming in 2024, where a lot of those early practices were for those guys to look at each other and be like, what do you want to do? What do you thrive at? And how can we bridge this thing? And it's going to take adaptability from both sides, I think, to get to that place. And how adaptable each guy is going to really matter. So I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but it's been really interesting to me to talk to people who have spent time around him, because you wade into nuance and complexity of how much of a lot of this stuff, how much of him having to scramble and play off schedule is a byproduct of the offense that we saw in Washington. Jaden Daniels have to do a lot of that stuff, which led to him suffering some injuries. So even the health, you wonder how much of that has been system related versus just like player specific traits. And I think that's why people around the league are so interested in this marriage as a data point and kind of a example of what it can look like in a different circumstance. So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's all been fun to me.
We love the rambles of Alec Lewis. It's soothing. It's really nice to hear. Luke and Reggie, clean up anything we missed. Any other drawbacks that you can think of with Kyler Murray?
I'll just throw this out there. I know there's some questions about the kind of leadership stuff, maybe the work habits, which obviously, that's not a great look, but I also think sometimes can be blown out of proportion a little bit. You probably have to take each one kind of case by case and dissect it. But anytime you have to have a clause put in your contract to make sure you're watching film and kind of holding you accountable, especially as the quarterback of the team, right? That's always going to be a little bit of a red flag too. So, look, I mean, there's a reason why even after using the number 1 overall pick and seeing flashes, seeing the ceiling of a top 5 quarterback, the Arizona Cardinals let him go. He's far from perfect, but I still think, the moral of this conversation, it's going to be up to KOC, as kind of Alec pointed out, and that staff to make sure this is as clean of a process on him, on and off the field it can be, and he stays, again, kind of coloring inside the lines on the field, so to speak, and everything that goes into being a starting quarterback in the NFL, again, on and off the field.
Reg, final thought?
I actually think it's going to be interesting with the competition between he and JJ. Maybe Carson too, if we're just going to throw it all in there. But I think the competition is interesting. You have a former number 1 overall pick who pretty much got handed the keys to the car for 7 years. And then now he's in a situation where, he's still getting paid mightily. Shout out to his tax guy having to, juggle multiple states of income now, but, still getting paid mightily. But now being in a situation where he's got to go out and earn it, I think it's going to bring out the best in him. You would hope anyway that he's a gamer, just like JJ is a gamer, and embrace the competition. But I'm just interested to see how that goes. We see all these sports movies where, a guy is competing with another guy for the top spot, and how spiteful maybe it gets, and things like that. I don't know that it's going to be like that. It sounds like both guys are professionals, but I am interested to see how that goes, just from two guys who kind of got handed the keys to the car. JJ got handed the keys to the car last year, and now they're like, we'll take those back. Let's have you test drive. Let's test drive you a little bit more before we commit. We're actually leasing you now. That's how we're doing it. So maybe we'll give the car back. So I'm interested to see how this competition plays out, and just to see if the guys play nice.
It is interesting to think back. I think back to the Daniel Jones article or quotes that was put out about just his time in Minnesota, short time in Minnesota, but just everything he learned in that quarterback room about how to prepare, how to study, things that he just never really maybe paid attention to some finer details, and then took all that obviously to Indianapolis and kind of revived his career, right? It is interesting to think about, or kind of enticing, I guess, to think about Kyler Murray, getting out of that Arizona environment with Cliff Kingsbury and now coming over to the, KOC school of quarterbacks, if you will. But we'll see how it all plays out. Again, I just feel like this environment, not just the player personnel and the talent he's going to have around him, is going to unlock some things, but also, again, off the field in that quarterback room with KOC, as kind of Daniel Jones pointed out, is worth a lot more than I think us, even as fans who don't have an inside look, is worth a lot more than maybe we give it credit for.
The Jonathan Greenard trade rumors have gone from a boil to a simmer. What's going on? Alec Lewis helps illuminate it next. Brought to you today by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involve significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Vikings with Luke Braun, daily 30-minute dose of Minnesota Vikings football, as well as Locked On Vikings After Dark with Arif Hassan. It gets sultry and it just gets a little risque there after dark on Locked On Vikings. Jonathan Greenard is still a Viking as of today. I think he posted some pictures of him in the Vikings uniform. He did some social media stuff that made it look like things are maybe a little rosier with the team. But Alec Lewis, you wrote about the situation as we stand right now at theathletic.com. You published it at 5 a.m. today. Were you awake at 5 a.m. publishing, or was that a scheduled post?
Absolutely scheduled. I think I wrote it Tuesday. It was going to be scheduled for Wednesday. Then the 2028 draft thing happened, so we ran that Wednesday. But absolutely not. I am not a 5 a.m. workout warrior. It will never be my style, even though it probably should be from a health standpoint. But no, yeah, good timing for this to be a talker on the show.
Yeah, no question. Well, I think we're all on record on this show saying if your plan is Andrew Van Ginkel in a contract year and assuming Dallas Turner takes a jump and then draft pick, like if that's your pecking order at edge, you've got a problem if you plan to trade Jonathan Greenard. So what is the current status with Jonathan Greenard, who is the 15th highest paid edge in the NFL and probably wants a raise?
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings, I've said this plenty of times, like, they don't want to trade Jonathan Greenard. The Vikings recognize the value, even though he only had 3 sacks last year, even though he only played in 12 games and I think started 10 games. Like, the Vikings understand, to the point you just mentioned, Sam, like, he's the 15th highest paid edge rusher for a reason. I mean, this guy, again, he's had 15 sacks combined over the last 2 years. The more advanced metrics, and I dove into this a little bit in the story, whether you're talking win rate, quick pressure rate, like this stuff, it was even better in 2025 than it was in 2024. The reason the trade idea conversation surfaced is because a guy of his production, as the cap increases, as edge rushers continue to reset the market, is going to want more money. And this Vikings team has been navigating a salary cap crunch. He's also represented by Drew Rosenhaus. Drew likes to live in the appropriate market for his clients, as he should. That is his job. And so that obviously introduces a level of complication. So the Vikings have been pretty malleable and open with Jonathan Greenard and with Drew Rosenhaus. Look, if you want this value that you believe you're deserving right now, then, go see if there's another team that is willing to pay you on the market for that type of cost, and pay us in draft compensation that is valuable enough for what we think you're deserving of. And thus far, those two worlds have not married up. I wrote in the story, I still think Philadelphia needs a premium edge rusher, so I'd expect them to be interested. Indianapolis is another team in the market that I would expect to be interested, but they have to meet a two-pronged type of answer to the question. You have to pay the Vikings in premium draft capital, which is what they're asking for and should be asking for, and you have to pay Jonathan Greenard a premium contract to be one of the elite edge rushers in the NFL, which is not cheap. And that is a hurdle to climb. And thus far, no team has been willing to climb that hurdle. And we'll see if it happens, or if Jonathan Greenard's asking price kind of probably moves a little bit over the next days, weeks, months ahead.
Yeah. I mean, Reggie, Alec just said Elite Eight, a place that sadly the Missouri Tigers won't be. But right now, Jonathan Greenard is 15th. He's 15th in salary. If you move him up to 8th, he goes from $19 million per year up to $30 million per year. That's tied with Jalen Phillips. He would be ahead of Trey Hendrickson, Nick Bonito, Josh Hines Allen. He'd be right behind Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. I guess it's conceivable. It's conceivable you see him as a Jalen Phillips facsimile, and that he's deserving of $30 million. That to me is the high end of his value. Once you get into Bosa, Crosby, Garrett, Danielle Hunter territory, then I think you're out of, that's an unrealistic ask if that's what Jonathan Greenard wants. High end, put him 8th, $30 million. I think that could make some sense. Does that make sense to you?
So I'm just going to go on record and just say I really like JG. He's a great guy. Always been great to talk to in the locker room. So I preface that. But I will say the tough part about this whole situation is lack of production last year. We talked about the sacks that he missed on, the whiffs, and then also the pretty serious injury that he had to end his campaign. And so when you couple those two, I think it makes this situation difficult. Do I think he is a premium edge rusher? Yes, full stop. That's why the Vikings brought him here. I think he is a great edge rusher. The problem is 3 sacks last year, wanting a raise. The two don't necessarily go together. And then you mix in the injury as well. I do think he's going to have a great rebound season next year and come back on a vengeance. He's a guy that likes to play with a chip on his shoulder. And I can see him coming back to the level that we've seen the last several years, notwithstanding last year. But that's the tough part to me. If he has double-digit sacks last year, I think that's probably an easy thing. If the Vikings don't want to give him the raise that he's looking for, that trade that failed with Max Crosby, I can see them saying, hey, here's a 1 for JG. We'll give him a raise. We'll pair him up with Trey Hendrickson, and this is our new duo. Same thing, Eagles, Colts, they just meet him at the asking price. But I think what makes it complicated is the fact that the sack numbers were down last year and he had the injury. But you have to kind of have some vision and kind of have to just love the player to make sure that that's a guy that you think is going to get back to the level of a Pro Bowl player that we've seen him in coming into last season. And so I think it makes the situation really complicated. That said, like, I'd love to continue to see him in purple next year if it works out. But I just don't know the logistics. Like, I don't know at what point does the team say, here's this, and the Vikings go, ooh, yeah, we got to make that deal, or not.
Just to that same point, Sammy asked, does it make sense to pay JG $30 million? I think it just depends on where you think you are as a franchise. I think every franchise's goal and GM is to build these kind of 3, 4, 5 year competitive windows to go on a run. And I think back to last year, every expert said this is a very deep playoff roster. They were ready to roll, just a quarterback away. And we're here 1 year later. You can't tell me that they're not still thinking that they're in at least a playoff type of window with the talent they got at these starting spots. And then, on top of that, I think when you go get a quarterback of Kyler Murray's caliber and raise that position ceiling kind of exponentially, at least from what you got last year, I think you're sending a message to the fan base that we're all in on at least being very competitive again this year in 2026. We got some cap things to clear up, but we're, anything but in rebuild mode right now. So when these Greenard rumors came out, I just thought it just didn't make a lot of sense from a roster management standpoint to go get somebody like Kyler one day. And granted, I get it, 1.3 mil. Why not? But then go move arguably your best defensive player for a day 2 pick. That just never really added up. I think it would send a kind of a confusing message, I think. And I think we're about 3 weeks, since these rumors kind of came to fruition. It feels like some dust is kind of settling. It feels like with each passing day, for me personally, it's more and more likely he's going to stick around, maybe get a new deal done with all that cap they just opened up in 2027. And to you guys' point, I think it's the right move if you think you're in a competitive window, which I think Rob Brzezinski, the Wilfs, KOC, everybody in that building plans on being very competitive this year.
If you are Jonathan Greenard, I just think it behooves you to play a little bit of long game, to bet on yourself, because you've got multiple cracks at this, right? Like, he's late 20s. This is probably his chance for the biggest contract he will ever get. Why are you trying to negotiate this hard now when there are legitimate concerns about your health and production? I think that he probably points to some of the underlying things like win rate, like Alec talked about, but the high level production was not as present last year, and he does not have a year over year track record of doing this. In Houston, he was a moderate to high end, but not elite pass rusher in Houston. He turned into that 1 year in Minnesota. He doesn't have so much ground to stand on. Now, he's got a crack at it now if he wants to play some hardball, but he's also got a crack at it next year. If he shows up, plays, and produces, then he will be eligible to sign a massive extension, probably more than the $30 million that we're talking about. Oh, okay, maybe this season doesn't quite go as planned. Then he's got another chance in his 4th year in Minnesota, and then he hits free agency. So this is not his only chance to cash in. He can negotiate from a much more powerful leverage position if he plays this year, I think. Now, it's not my money we're dealing with. Like, he's probably thinking, we got to strike while I'm still young, while the iron is hot, before I suffer another injury and things get worse. I get it. You want to wrap it up now, but think of the payday he could procure if he plays well this year. Then we're talking market setting. Then we're talking $40+ million range if he gets 13 sacks this year and plays 17 games. Kind of a bet on yourself situation, I would say. That's just me, though.
And Sam, can I say too, I understand what you're saying, and I think maybe from JG's point of view, he played 17 games in the 2024 season, first season in Minnesota. But beyond that, he hasn't finished the year without some sort of injury. Even the career year that he had in Houston, going into his contract that he got with the Vikings, he played 15 games. He had 12 and a half sacks. First year in Minnesota, he had 12. Those were the only 2 years where he had double-digit sack production. And so now you're looking at, first year, 13 games, second year, 12 games, third year, 8 games, and then last year, 12 games. I think he's like, look, I've done some really good things in the league. Go ahead and pay me what my production would suggest I am worth right now. I'm 28. You keep going, and some of the things with the body just continues to break down. You only have a certain window to make the type of money that I feel like is generational.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I would say here is I don't know necessarily that he's seeking some massive long-term, like major high money. More than anything, and I don't know, Sam, I don't know if I said Elite Eight. I might have misspoke there. Like, I don't think 30 million is actually like what is sensible. Like, I think you're looking more at like what Montez Sweat gets paid in average annual value. It's like 24 and a half, probably. Like, that's a $5.5 million adjustment. But I think it's more than a massive extension, or it's more of a market correction to the production that he's had. Now, yeah. I will say this to Reggie's point about the health, like, that could be used on both sides. For Jonathan Greenard, that would be why he wants security. For the Vikings, that would be a reason why you would want long-term flexibility. So you could, play a lot of ways with that. I would also say there is some leverage for Jonathan Greenard here because of how you started the conversation, Sam. The idea of losing him and him not being present, and having Andrew Van Ginkel, who has been hurt, Dallas Turner, who, yes, did take a progression over the back half, but is not, I wouldn't say anybody views him as this menacing guy off the edge right now, and then potentially a rookie draftee at a position that takes multiple years for development. Like, that is a leverage point for Jonathan Greenard. If you pull me out of this defense, then can you be what you've been over the last 2 years? Like, that is certainly a leverage point for him. So I think point. to sum it up, and to Reggie's point, it is a difficult one here because of the health, because of the production and the counting statistic versus the advanced production. Like, there are a lot of variables here, which is why I think you've had the oddity of the Vikings are opening to trade him, but they don't want to lose him. Like, all of that exists because of the complexity of this one player and where the money is and the health, etc.
Yeah. And I will say to the Vikings, if the market correction he's seeking is just the $5 million more that we've suggested on this show, do it. Then there's no reason not to. Give him 4 years, $100 million, and call it a day. That would actually be great value for the organization. So, and you know what? Maybe there's a Danielle Hunter solution to this, where I think it was 1 year. They reduced his contract, they restructured it, and made him a free agent after the season as a compromise. And maybe that's the solution they come to with Jonathan Greenard. We'll accelerate your free agency. We'll pay you $25 million for 1 year and give you a chance to cash in again next year. Maybe we'll see something like that. That's something that Rob Brzezinski is familiar with. When we come back, maybe we'll talk about the edge position, the deepest and shallowest position groups on the Vikings roster. Coming up next on the Squad Show. We're brought to you today by Home Chef. This time of year where all you really want is something warm, easy, and satisfying. That's why Home Chef has become such a go-to. Takes the stress out of dinner, makes it simple to actually enjoy cooking again with fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients, simple recipes, meals that taste great. I love how convenient this is. It actually makes cooking pretty fun for me because it takes a lot of the thinking out. It's all set for you. You don't have to shop because it comes right to you, and the recipe is very clear, and the game plan is already made for you. And that just makes it, I think, so much easier after a busy day of work to get in the kitchen. Everything's all portioned out, less prep, less cleanup. Just makes dinner feel manageable. So for a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off and free shipping for your first box, plus free dessert for life if you have a sweet tooth like me. Homechef.com/LockedOnNFL. Homechef.com/LockedOnNFL. 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Thanks for listening to the Vikings Squad Show today. Hey, hit that subscribe button here on Locked On Vikings. We'd appreciate that. Spinman, kick us off. I want deepest and shallowest position group on the Vikings roster as it stands right now. Give me one of each.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough game to play because it really feels like outside of maybe one or two position groups, it all kind of needs some reviving and fresh blood. I mean, the fact we're talking about, a running back as a legitimate option in round 2, and yet I could probably sit here just to play devil's advocate, Sam. I could sit here and make the argument having Jordan Mason, a healthy Aaron Jones, and a 23-year-old Xavier Scott, who's really kind of flashed every time he's given an opportunity, whether that was preseason or last year overseas. That might be one of your better, or at least upper half positions as far as just depth goes. That's 3 capable guys, for one spot. So there's far worse depth charts, I guess, on the roster right now. I would say maybe best. This is going to kind of sound maybe a little wild, but how about quarterback? Is there a better 3-man quarterback room as far as talent goes in the NFL than what they got right now? Probably not on paper with 3 top 10 draft picks in the fold. Your quarterback 3 right now, let's say it's JJ McCarthy, top 10 pick from 3 years ago. He's only started 10 games. Again, trying to play a little devil's advocate there. And then maybe worst position group, safety and D-line come to mind right away. I'll go with safety. I feel like you know exactly what you're getting with Theo Jackson at this point. You know the ceiling on a Jay Ward, who I still think could be a contributor in 2026, but not a super high ceiling. And whether Harrison Smith, whether he retires or not, God bless him, he's just not in his peak prime Harry the Hitman anymore. So safety probably got to be number 1 for me as far as worst depth chart positions.
I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to think of a position where I love the number 3. So you like your top 2 at running back, tight end, receiver, linebacker, tackle, maybe even you could say corner. You like where do you love your 3rd? I don't know. There's the depth is shallow, and I know you still have to add almost 30 guys to this roster. Don't know how many game changers you're going to add at this point. It is tough. It is tough to find real meaningful depth on this team. I mean, you barely have any bodies at corner. I don't know, linebacker, Cashman, Wilson, and Pace. Is that deep? I don't think so. I have a hard time conjuring up a legitimate area of depth, Alec. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing for me is, I was going to say quarterback too. Quarterback being the deepest position, which is crazy. And I will say, it has been their primary priority this offseason, and they have 3 guys at $11 million with 199 starts in that position. I mean, they have done good work there. But the 2 things I'm thinking of are how many teams do love their number 3 at a certain position. So maybe you could say Seattle and their edge rusher spot, they do absolutely love that. And that's a credit to them, and the Eagles maybe over time. So that would be a question I have. I'd say the thinnest position for me is probably defensive tackle. I love Jalen Redmond. Yes, you got the development of Levi Drake Rodriguez and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, but those guys don't have a lot of starts or high-end production. So that's probably where I'd go. But I'm with you, Sam. If I look around, receiver, I think that needs depth. Safety, I think you need depth. Linebacker, edge rusher, cornerback, running back, tight end, tackle, center, guard. I think they all need depth. That's why you got 9 picks or 8 picks, whatever you got.
Yeah. I mean, you're certainly going to add a lot of bodies between now and September 1st. The question is, what can you expect from those bodies that you're adding at this point? This does feel like post June 1st, when some money opens up and free agency has hit that lull where you have a lot of veterans sitting out there. Maybe you're even a team that capitalizes on camp cuts. I feel like a lot of that movement to create depth is going to happen very late in the game because it's not a sustainable level right now. You got to add a few more vets. It can't all be UDFAs that rounds out this roster. Reggie, what do you got?
I think this is very interesting, Sam. When was the last time the Vikings have kind of been in this position? You know, they didn't necessarily spend, and they're like, okay, we're going to look to the draft for our depth. Like it's been a while. It's been a while because they've been known to take some swings in free agency. You know, even earlier on in Kwesi's tenure, he was kind of getting those first round flameouts, you know, where he's like, oh, okay, yeah, if they can prove it, cool. But now you're looking at all these positions that Alec mentioned, and you're like, oh yeah, like they could use another body there. Oh, they can use another body there. And so thank you, Norris Force. I've been saying that on this particular show for like a month now. I feel like they need a home run hitter. But to answer the question, and this is an interesting deal for me, because I actually agree with Luke and Alec, quarterback. And this is all things that Kevin O'Connell loves to hear. I think last year did such damage to the psyche of Kevin O'Connell that he was just like, no, we got to get that. If we don't do anything else, we got to get that together. And then on the other side of that, though, Sam, I throw something out there. I'm still going to pick quarterback because you got three guys who have known to have some injury history there. And the thought is like, oh, if one guy goes down, we'll just, you know, put the other one in. If he goes down, we got another starting caliber quarterback. Is there a world where something happens with one or all three of them? And then what do? That's a crazy thought to me, but I think that's the first thing I thought when I saw, okay, they brought Carson Wentz back to go with Kyler and to go with JJ. And I know JJ's been putting in some work, and I know Kyler wants to prove, you know, for another contract that he can do it. And so they all have like reasons, and they all have ability, and they all have like something that they're trying to prove. But health is a big factor with all these guys. Carson didn't even play that much last year, and he got hurt. And it's just like, goodness gracious. So I am interested to see if these guys can hold up over a full season. You can say thin at almost any position. Alec just rattled off like 10 different position groups that need depth. And so I could have picked all of those guys or all of those positions to say, oh, they're the thinnest here. But I think they're simultaneously the strongest or the deepest at quarterback, but also like an injury or two away from being the thinnest at quarterback as well. Now you're just in this situation where maybe you try to bring Josh Dobbs back or something because he's going to be free soon.
I just want to real quick highlight one of the 13 options Alex gave us, but I feel like we need to start talking about center as its own position instead of lumping it in with just the interior offensive line. I think Vikings are set in, at the guard spot, which we should just be calling it the guard spot. But what center is now asked to do with all these, exotic looks, exotic calls being basically, you're kind of like a second quarterback on the field with the checks and the pre-snap reads and the alignments, things like that. It feels like it's on another level than it was, 3, 4, 5 years ago even. So having Michael Juergens and Blake Brandel as your kind of two guys right now, obviously we haven't had the draft yet, but I would put center for me right behind safety as the number 2 kind of worst depth chart. Again, if we can kind of, isolate center from this kind of interior offensive line conversation that we had.
I think both guys kind of flashed last year, especially Brandel at the center position, where you're like, oh, this could work. Maybe he's a long-term solution. But I feel like they still were like, oh, but we still like him to be like this Swiss Army knife guy and not just put him in at center. But I think he has a good opportunity as anyone to maybe even take over that starter role. But, I think that is an obvious position that they need to add some depth to.
Start practicing your shotgun snap. You're going to have to do it 90% of the time. Start practicing, Blake. Got to hit him in the chest. No snaps over the head. Also,
unless Cliff Kingsbury is coming to call plays, I can't fathom the idea that the Vikings would be running out of the shotgun 90% of the time.
Yeah. What'd you say? 89% of the time. Where does that is that number one with a bullet? Is that where did that rank?
Yeah.
I hate to put you on the spot, but
I tried to filter this on StatHead, and I don't think you can filter it by shotgun percentage, but I looked at see if you can find it, Alec. I looked at Sam Darnold for comparison. He was like low 70s. Kirk Cousins was in the 60s.
Yeah.
So if Cousins is in the 60s, that's probably like what you would expect from your normal pocket passer.
Yeah.
I don't know what Lamar operates a lot out of shotgun. I don't know what he's at. Alec, let us know.
So from 19 to 2022, when Cliff was there, they operated out of the gun 90% of the time. That's correct. The Ravens were the only team higher 93%, essentially. Wow. So,
I'm curious. Go ahead.
If you go Kyler's entire career in Arizona, 82% out of the gun. The two teams higher were the Ravens at 84 and the Eagles at 82, which would make sense. So
I'm just curious how much Washington was in that mix the last 2 years when Cliff Kingsbury left Arizona, went to Washington, and what Jaden Daniels' numbers were.
Yeah, I'll tell you. They were number one, 89%.
Okay.
So Cliff loves
Cliff.
Yeah, maybe McVay coaches it out of him a little bit. He's just like, no, we're just going to run what we did in college. It works.
And I'll say this, too. In the 2 years with Drew Petzing, Kyler was – I can do this math while y'all hold on. I'm hijacking the podcast with numbers, which isn't the greatest. So Kyler was 73% out of the gun with Drew Petzing the last 2 years, which would have put him around ninth most in the NFL. So there you go.
Still top 10, but kind of a big drop off though, too.
Yeah, a lot more
90 to
it's very system. It's very system oriented, and I think that's if you're the Vikings looking at this from a fit standpoint with Kyler, that is one data point that would lead you to be more optimistic that the fit could work. And so, I think that is the nuance of this, where anybody who is, and I know we're going to make this Kyler radio, but anybody who is, this fit makes no sense. I think there's much more nuance to be provided there. Anybody who's this fit is perfect, there's nuance that way too. And so that's probably not the sexiest squad show conversation, but it's important in my opinion.
Small piece of that puzzle as well, being out of the shotgun. When you're on a bad team and you're down 17 going into halftime, every game as well, and you just forced to sit back in the pocket and in those shotgun reps, I guess, and sling it 32 times in the second half. Obviously, that's going to inflate some numbers as well. And too tough to sit there and pick and prod through each team, each quarterback, and look at those numbers. But we know the Cardinals were not a very good team, just in general, the last 7 years, too.
Yeah, it sounds like, too, that they just tried to put an offense around Kyler that he was comfortable with, and maybe him being in shotgun, his stature, allowed him to be able to see the field a little bit better from the snap. And so I'm interested to see how that marries with what Kevin O'Connell wants to do with his quarterbacks in the system, being okay, well, this is what Kyler does well. Let's try to see if we can marry what my offensive concepts are that can kind of meet Kyler where he is, but also take him to another level that we haven't seen him consistently in his career.
The one quick thing,
yeah,
Sam, so real quick, and then sorry for clomping on you. I think when you talk to people, there's a misconception sometimes that if you're tall, you can see. And if you're small, you can't see. A lot of that is cognitive ability and processing speed. And so that can often get lost. And that's not to say that Kyler can see extremely well, but I do think that when you talk to people in the league, that is one misconception that comes up of assuming that just because a guy is tall, he can see. So anyway, it's all like this. This is why over the next 3 months, 5 months, like this will be awesome conversation because there's a lot of like layers to it that are very intriguing for guys like Luigi and his username.
Yeah, if the tallest guy was the best quarterback, Paxton Lynch would have been a first ballot.
Brock Osweiler, H-O-F. Quick
go.
Prospect of the day when we return. I'll also force everyone on the panel to give their number one draft crush next. We're brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft. 18 different flavors to choose from. They're all getting settled in the green room. Friends and family close by. The board is all set. And I've got my number one pick for the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're going to go with blue raspberry. It's raspberry, but it's got that twist. Maybe a little bit smoother even than the tartness of a raspberry. It's a classic blend, not found naturally, but found at 5 Hour Energy Shots. It's just phenomenal. And there's 18 different flavors and more coming soon. And it gives you that boost with zero sugar, great flavor, so much innovation. It's the best way to stay energized. So find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy Shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Prospect of the day, gone for our guy, Luke.
Yeah, I know we talked about Grayson Halton a few weeks ago. In fact, I think, Alec, you had him in one of your mock draft version, maybe 1.0, 2.0. It just feels like when we talk about defensive tackle, I know we just highlighted it as maybe the worst depth position on this Vikings roster. If you don't go like a Peter Woods or Caleb Banks or Caden McDonald from Ohio State in one of these top 50 picks, the drop off to the next tier is pretty steep. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. But I still try to find a day 3 sleeper with some upside, a guy that I think could still come in and contribute year one. And that's Caleb Proctor, small school guy, southeastern Louisiana, where he wasn't just the defensive player of the year in that conference. He was the overall player of the year in that conference. He just smoked all that lower school competition, which I know that's one thing, but honestly, even the LSU tape going up against guys that, ultimately he's going to face and see in the NFL. He posted 2 sacks in that game. And I think he really showed that, he can hold his own against some of the other big boys. Big winner at the Shrine Bowl, I remember, turned a lot of heads. And then he puts up this fantastic combine as well. 9.51 RAS score. That's kind of top tier elite numbers. Ran a 4.7 940 at 291, which for defensive tackles, that's the 4th fastest 40 in the last 4 years. I know a lot of people look at him mostly as kind of this smaller 3 tech with kind of some quick, twitchy get off and explosiveness. But what's interesting about him to me, he showed up to the Senior Bowl at 6'2", 275. A few weeks later, he shows up to Indy 6'2", 291. So 16 pounds. My question here
pancakes. Ate some pancakes.
Yeah, in the blender, Sam. In the blender, throw it all in there. But like my question is, what's his natural playing weight going to look like? If he stays at that 290-ish size, how much quickness, how much burst does he lose? Because that's kind of his bread and butter. That's what he's known for. That's what makes him special and unique. He's so quick with that first step. He's got good hand technique. Pretty smart pass rusher, too. Feels like he's got a good game plan and attacks kind of every rep with kind of a blueprint, so to speak. But 39 quarterback pressures last year alone. Highest pressure rate among all defensive tackles in this entire draft with 18.4%. And again, just for reference, our guy Grayson Halton from Oklahoma, he's number 2 on that list. So, pretty intriguing pass rusher. Bad news is why he's being talked about, a day 3 guy. Obviously the small school label, but he's just not very good against the run, kind of point blank. 18% missed tackle rate, 18% missed tackle rate at that level. It's kind of borderline, almost not even playable, at least like on first down, right? So he just doesn't have that great anchor or power or, sand in the pants, as they call it, to hold that point of attack. So that's kind of his big bugaboo, his big Achilles heel. Running game, not his thing yet, but, it just feels like, for the most part, if I'm talking about day 3 picks, and again, I don't know, is he a 5 tech, a 3 tech, a 2i? What is he? Obviously, Flores can make a lot of different skill sets work, but if I'm talking about day 3 pick and I can find a kind of sub-package nickel pass rusher, maybe he only plays 20, 25 snaps a game, but a guy that can impact the quarterback and muddy that pocket, I feel like you're getting your money's worth and kind of your value out of a day 3 pick. So, being able to affect the quarterback in that pocket, so important in today's, NFL. Again, if I can find a sub package guy on day 3, I'm all about it. So again, kind of big picture though, this defensive tackle class, kind of tough to get your money's worth. It feels like after that first big drop off.
I would say the Vikings organizationally have not been opposed to finding creative places to get defensive tackles, whether it's Jalen Redmond from, the XFL. It's Levi Drake Rodriguez from Texas A&M Commerce. It's, where did Taki come from? Can anybody?
Oregon.
Okay, that's more traditional.
How about even like Jonathan Bullard? Like how for how cheap he was and boring and just a run. How productive, how great a value was he for that 4 or 5 mil, whatever it was, too?
Yeah. So. Elijah Williams, who's my guy, my sleeper this year. He was, I think, a
Oregon
D2
State.
player. Oregon State?
Morgan
State. Yeah, Morgan State. Thank you. The Morgan State Bears. So Caleb Proctor could be the latest. But in closing, we're past an hour. Can everyone give their draft crush right now? Just like stamp their flag for who their draft crush is, because I think I'm in love with D'Angelo Pons.
Yeah,
I think that's Alec's guy. So I'm gonna steal it before Alec does. I think I want D'Angelo Pons. He's just like the value. If he drops out of the first round, you could be getting the best corner in the draft. Like you don't know for sure, but the production intrigued me so much. And against high levels of competition as well.
Almost a similar, different position, still secondary, but an Antoine Winfield Jr. situation where it's like, man, he should have never fell early, mid-second round. We all knew he was good, sure, a little bit undersized, but had the bloodlines. Love Pons. Don't think he's going to be there at 49, which sucks. Maybe you got to trade back and get some value, but I'll go Avion Terrell, corner Clemson. Stick with a first-round guy, even though they got 3 good cornerbacks they feel good about on paper. After seeing Trent McDuffie and how much he got paid, how much these cornerbacks are getting paid now as well, what a premium position that, just continues to be in this kind of pass-happy league. I think Avion Terrell is not only a premium position, he's one of the premium players in this class, and I feel like he makes a lot of sense. He connects a lot of dots with Brian Flores and what he likes to do with that demeanor, that physicality, that football IQ, whether it's zone or man. And most importantly, too, he just gives the Vikings a building block at a premium position they have not had since Xavier Rhodes 13 drafts ago. So it's been a long time since they've had a foundational cornerback. Terrell just feels like such a high floor guy, maybe not the high ceiling in the class, but such a high floor, safe pick. And I know for one thing, Rob Brzezinski needs to hit this first-round pick in this first draft.
Can we just talk about it? Felt like Superior Sports Talk days. You can let Luke go for like an hour on these draft prospects. He just nerded out like for 10 minutes on some guys that one guy especially I never heard of, and you gotta love it. You gotta love it.
You were watching Caleb Proctor against Mississippi Valley State, Reggie. Admit it. It's okay.
Come on, the Southland Conference. The SLC,
sure did.
the Southland,
Sure
the pride
did.
of the SLC. Yeah.
I got to be honest with this draft class. Yeah, Luke, that was impressive, by the way. I got to be honest. Like, there aren't a lot of guys that I've watched who I'm like, man, I love that guy in this draft. Like, it's just not. And maybe that's always how it is because they're not perfect prospects in coming from college. But I've really had a hard time. Like, I see all these names, I see all these tweets about guys, and I'm like, all right, I'll watch them. And I'm like, yeah, okay. D'Angelo Pons would be one guy I do love. Jeremiah Love would be another one, which is not stepping out on any limb. Mansour Delane, the corner from LSU, I really like him. I think he's solid. So that would probably be my guy. There's one lower round guy I do really like at center, a guy named Yeager Burton from Kentucky. I watched the film the other night of this guy, and I'm like, I really kind of like him. I thought he might even look better than a lot of the other centers. So that's my guy. But I will say, watching him, that's the thing about the draft is like they got to nail it. They got to hit these Pro Bowlers. Like, well, a lot of these guys, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Are they going to be good? So it's tough. It's what makes it tough. Anyway.
Yeah. All draft classes are not created equal. We had a good draft class last year, I think 2027 with all the quarterback hype around, Arch Manning and so on and so forth. That's going to be a great class. It just feels like, but not every draft class, you get a AJ Green and a Julio Jones in the same draft, so, and this stuff, it does feel like kind of a down year just in general, once you get past those kind of blue chip prospects.
So I'll say my guy that I have to go with from St. Louis, I love Jeremiah Love. I've been talking about home run hitter for a running back. Like, I saw this dude go 99 yards. Like, he's a dude. I like him better than I liked Ashton Genty coming out last year. I just think he's as close to a can't miss prospect as you get for a running back. I think he's a dude that can go, if he stays healthy, like, be a legit guy for like 8 to 10 years at least.
Good stuff, guys, today. Viking Squad Show twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, streaming live on Locked On Vikings, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate you watching, listening, commenting, and subscribing. For Luke, for Alec, for Reggie, I'm Sam. We'll talk to you next time on The Squad Show.